The state government of Queensland have a budget deficit of $90 billion, and yet we're talking about the Olympics 12 years down the track, 2032. Now, when I've travelled this state quite extensively, I'm going to towns that don't even have water. They're trucking the water in. Stanthorpe is one, Colston Lakes is another, Biggenden is another one, lack of water infrastructure. Now, the Oxford University has done a survey into the cost of Olympics to cities that host them. There's an average of 156% blowout, and at the cost of the Olympics, they estimate it's about $12.5 billion, our money, that it's going to cost us. I don't believe that we can afford it, and I think water infrastructure is more important to Queensland.
Australia's having a pretty rough time at the moment, though. We've seen years of drought, it's still going on, shocking, unprecedented bushfires. Don't you think this sort of tourism is perhaps what the country needs going ahead?
No, I don't. If you're talking about tourism, and as you said, we've had drought and bushfires. America put out, don't travel to Australia because of bushfires. Why would people want to go to community in rural and regional Australia when townships are shutting down?
So you're
shops
saying,
are closing.
You're saying
they're
you'd
looking
like
tired
to see...
and worn out, and the fact is we don't have the water.
As far as other drought-proofing measures, when you look at the current bushfire crisis, would you like to see some of the money that perhaps would have gone towards something like hosting the Olympics or an Olympic bid maybe spent on a bushfire royal commission instead?
Lucy, let me just tell you, you are incorrect with your information about the Bradfield scheme not being feasible. The fact is the feasibility study was done in it by SMEC, and that was actually come out and said it would be feasible to do it, and they're actually saying to give it to foreign investors to build the scheme, which I'm totally opposed to. This should be built by Australians, for Australians, owned by the Queensland and Australian government. So therefore, that is incorrect, your information. What better scheme should we have than building water infrastructure that will give water assurance and security to the people of Australia, rather than seeing them told they're on water restrictions in our townships. And it's disgusting that we've increased our population into Australia, but we have not looked after our water infrastructure. As far as having a Royal Commission into the bushfires, by all means, but we must attach that to let's have the true science and peer review of the scientists and their climate change fiasco that's going on at the moment, which is impacting on the cost of electricity, the cost of living to people, especially in rural and regional areas where it's skyrocketing, they can't afford it, and this is having the impact on townships as well, and those people in cities who can't afford the rising costs of electricity. So yes, I'd like that to be part of the Royal Commission if we're going to have it into the bushfires.
Sure, and what role do you think climate change has played in these recent bushfires?
Of course it has. Look, climate is changing by all means, but to say it's purely because of man-made climate change, I think is ridiculous. Our planet has changed. It has done for millions of years and will continue to do so. But the fact is you can't blame it purely on climate change.
But
it's
even
not
the
case.
Federal Science
We have
Minister...
not looked after our national parks. We have not looked after, giving the fire services the ability to go in and do fire breaks and clean up, and councils are stopping people from clearing trees around their properties. We live in a country where we have the eucalypt tree which explodes in fires.
But as far as the question of climate change, even this week the Federal Science Minister is saying we've got to stop debating whether it's real or not and just get on with adapting to it. Last year, if we look at Australia, it was the hottest, driest year on record. Globally, the last decade has been the warmest. How much of a temperature increase would you feel comfortable with by 2030?
temperatures have been increasing actually by the records, and they say by their records. Their records start in the early 1900s. They won't go back to the records prior to the 1900s. Look in the records of 1890, 1880, which were hotter than what they are now. So they choose to pick what records they want to.
But what would you
expose
feel
to the
comfortable
public.
with when you
we
think
need,
about...
We need a debate about it.
When you think about farmers who are on the... And you represent a lot of farmers, and they are on the front line of this. They are dealing with climate change every day. They just get on with it and do it. Are you have you got a certain figure in your mind that would be a limit as far as a temperature rise for the country and for the world?
And yeah, okay, if the climate is going to change and there it's going to increase in temperature, 2 to 3 degrees is what they're predicting in 100 years' time, well, you tell me what they propose to do to change it.
The Deputy Nationals leader, Bridget McKenzie, has been accused of using a $100 million sports grant program as a slush fund, effectively, in the lead up to the last election. Do you think she should quit?
Well, look, she's been accused of it because an audit was done. It was proven that it was. So, yeah, she is guilty of that. She says that she hasn't. Well, the audit has proven that they have used it, pork barrelling, as a slush fund. I thought she was hopeless in dealing with the dairying industry. And this is another case in point. I call for her resignation, that she should actually step down in any portfolio as minister. I don't think she's up to doing the job, and I stand by that.
Would
and
you
this is case in point. And I just don't think the Australian people are sick and tired of pork barrelling by politicians and looking after their own nest egg.
So I'm guessing then you would support Labor and the Greens in pushing for a Senate inquiry into her handling of this program?
Well, if it's going to prove that they've used that money, taxpayers' dollars, to feather their own nest and further themselves, yes, I do.